In this tutorial, I will teach you how to create simple animations using React Native's Animated API. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. First, let's open up a new folder in VS Code and open up the terminal. Now run the command cd ... This will take you to the parent folder of the folder we have open in VS Code. Now run the command npx create expo app followed by the name of the folder you have open, then -t, and then expo template blank TypeScript. This will provide all of the default files needed to create a React Native app with TypeScript. Once the command is done setting up all the files and installing all the npm packages, close the terminal and create a new folder in the root directory called components. In the components folder, create a new file called appbutton.tsx. Before we get into the components, we'll create an interface called appButtonProps. This will contain the necessary properties to create a customized button. Now export a default function called appButton. This component will serve as the default button for the application. The way we want this button to work is that whenever the user clicks on the button, we trigger an animation that will reduce the opacity of the button by a little bit, and when they click out of the button, it returns back to its normal state. To achieve this functionality, we first need to add a button animation property variable, which is just a new animated value wrapped in a useRef. The reason we wrap it in a useRef because every time the app button re-renders, we don't want to create a new animated.value. Now create two functions, one called handlePressIn and the other called handlePressOut. Provide the same configuration for the animated.timing function. We will get to this function later on in this video. Below the component, create a new style sheet and name it styles. As you could probably tell, these will be the styles that we will use to customize the button. Although we have some hard-coded styles, we will have some dynamic styles that will change on certain user events. We will listen to those events using the pressable component provided to us by React Native. The pressable component lets us listen to press functions from the user. Inside of this pressable class, we will add an animated.view component provided to us by React Native. We use the animated.view component instead of the standard view component because the animated view component allows us to add animated values in the styles and other properties. Finally, add a text component containing the label. Close the file, and in the components folder, add a new file called animatedbox.tsx. In this file, add a new interface called animatedBoxProps. This will contain the necessary properties to perform all the animations for the animated box. Like the app button component, let's make a new animated.value wrapped in a useRef. Because several styles are being animated on the box, we will use the interpolate function to create the various measurements for the different styles. The interpolate function does is that it takes in some inputs and maps it out to some outputs, and when animating, it does some easing functions and doesn't change the value instantly. Now create a new user effect and make sure to add the animation step that we have provided from the animated box props into its dependencies, and add the animated.timing function using the same configuration I have. The animated.timing function is the function most commonly used when working with the animated API in React Native. This function interpolates through the previous value and the value you want through the easing function. Finally, just add an animated.view component with the specific styles. Before we close the file, make sure to fix the error in the style. Now close the file. Now open up the app.tsx file in the root of the project. Now erase all the styles, and before we get into the markup of the component, let's first create the styles. Create a new app container style, an app section style, create a heading 1 style, and add a heading 2 style. Once you're done with the styles, go over to the app component and create a new stateful property called animation step. Now create a new function called handleAnimateClick. This is a function that is called whenever the user clicks on the button and wants to animate the next animation for the animated box. For the view of the actual app itself, let's create a safe area view that wraps the whole app. Next, let's create a new section that contains the titles. Below that, we have a new section that contains the animated box. And finally, add a new section that contains the button that animates the animated box. Now let's do some basic bug fixes. And once you're done fixing all the bugs, open the terminal. Make sure to cd into the project in the terminal. And once you have the project open in the terminal, run npm run iOS. Make sure to have an iOS simulator open before you run the iOS command And if you don't have an iOS simulator and you're running an Android simulator, run npm run Android. Once you have the application open on your device, you can clearly see that we have a header, a button, and a cube in the middle that you could animate by pressing the button. And that's all for today's video. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope it provided you with value.